The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hey everybody, it's Drew. We are going to do a little screen switching right before the top of the hour, so sit tight. If somebody can, in the question box, just tell me that you can hear me, that would be lovely. Just want to do a quick unofficial audio check, and then I will hand over the screen to Susan. Great. Thank you very much for the audio check. All right, hang on, Susan. I got to figure out how to give you this. Change presenter. That would be to you.
I have been made the presenter.
Okay.
Let's see. Main screen, show my screen. Yeah. How's that?
We're seeing your background screen that we're not.
Yep. That should be
There we
fixed
go.
now.
Okay. Yep, we are good. So let's just wait a minute or so and let everybody else rush into the room, and then we'll get started.
Perfect. And I can't see questions that attendees submit, so you'll need to share those.
So they can talk about you behind your back, is what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay.
I would encourage that.
All right. Yeah. And I will use discretion as which ones to read aloud then.
That'd be a start. You using discretion?
Well, I'm turning over a new leaf. All right, guys, I'm going to wait like a minute, and then we're just going to jump in and get started. I'm guessing that we're not going to have a standing room only crowd on this Wednesday before Thanksgiving. So a couple more folks pouring into the room. Sit tight, guys. We're just giving everybody a minute or two to get in the room, and then we will jump in and get started. As always, while we're waiting to get started, if you have questions as we go through the content, there's that questions box in your little control panel. Feel free to fire away with questions there, and we will try and answer them on the fly, but we will also give you time at the end of the content to ask questions as well. So going to give them about another 30 seconds, and then we'll get started. Hey guys, if you're just coming into the room, we're just basically treading water to give folks a minute or two to get in, and then we will get started. So,
Is Heather on your desk today, Drew?
no, Heather is resting for now. So shh. I have treats strategically planted in case she wakes up, but right now, as of right now, she is sitting on the chair or sleeping on the chair next to the desk. So she is one step away from hopping on my desk, but I'm hoping we can avoid it. Yes, we are, Jay. You're absolutely right about that. Jay sent a little note saying that we are weirdos. So
Can't that's not going to come as a surprise to anyone.
All right, let's get started. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for making time on this day before a holiday if you're here in the U.S. As you know, for the last 5 years, Susan and I have partnered together to do a different piece of research every year. We call it the Agency Edge Research Series, and you can download the executive summaries if you've missed some of them for all of the research online at either Susan's or my site. But for you guys, we always hold data back for the AMI crowd. And so rather than downloading it off of the website, which is the public version, if you don't have any of those, hey, Susan, can you go to the list?
The list?
Yeah, don't we?
I don't know if I have the list in this version.
Okay. Well, anyway, if you don't have anything from 2014 or beyond, then shoot me an email and I will send you the executive summaries. So happy to do that. But this year, what we wanted to do was we wanted to do a couple things. Number one, we wanted to go back and look at some of the data that we gathered in 2014 to see if there were changes, and then we added some additional questions, things that we were wondering. So go ahead, Susan, I'm going to let you jump in. I'm going to answer somebody's question on the side here.
Perfect. So, right. So we were looking at some of the things we found in 2014 and seeing if the attitudes that were defining clients back then were still in play today. This was a bigger study. We had over 1,000 agency clients, and this time we included clients in Canada, the UK, and Australia as well. We also included bigger budgets. So in our first study back in 2014, we only included clients who had budgets up to $1 million. This year we have them up to 20 million. We've got them all across the board from under 250 all the way up to 20 million. The size of this study gives us very high confidence, almost 3 percentage points plus or minus at 95%. So really strong data this time. So let's dive into the segments first of all. And I think this was the first surprise for me of a number in this study, Drew, was that the segments we found in 2014, we found again, completely organically, not artificially pre-bucketed. We found those same groups in 2019, which I thought was really interesting. The Looking for Love group, which is the sort of, I want to stay married to my agency folks, dropped by a little bit in 2019 in our overall group. They were 29% 5 years ago and 25% now. The single and satisfied stayed about the same percentage, 33% 5 years ago, 30% now. And our playing the field folks are really the group that grew in the overall population, 38% 5 years ago, 45% now.
So we'll give you a little bit of background on each of these groups, but what's interesting is we went into the 2019 study having no idea if these would be how people would cluster together or not. So the good news is in a world where everything is changing at a blink, 5 years later, these same types of clients are still out there. They're just out there in slightly different concentrations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we did find a few tweaks here and there. For example, so these Looking for Love respondents, as you all listening may remember, they really want to partner with an agency over the long term, and they really want to involve their agency in everything, even out to business strategy at times. The difference that we saw in 2019 was that this time around, this group recognizes that marketing today requires a lot of specific technical expertise. And this time, this group believes that small marketing agencies are more focused on their clients' needs. And you're going to see alignment between smaller budgets and this segment, which really sort of, I think, reflects this perception that the smaller agencies are the ones to stick with for this group.
So this is the client, if you guys remember from the 2014 study, or if you're not familiar with that, this is the client profile that most agencies really covet, which is this is the client who thinks that we have a lot of big ideas and they really want to collaborate with us in a very holistic way. So as Susan said, they want us talking about business strategy and sitting at the C-suite table. And so when we sort of dream up the ideal client, this is the one that I think most agency owners and leaders would describe, but they come with their own challenges.
Yeah, they sure do. So the second segment we found in 2014, and again this year, is this Playing the Field group. And what we know about these folks is they view that relationship with agencies very differently than our Looking for Love people do. They really see agencies as sort of a necessary evil. They have a lot of work to get done and they need agencies to do it. But they don't sort of prize that long-term relationship. In fact, these folks will say that it's good to change out agencies periodically, even if they're doing a good job. And in 2019, we saw some new attitudes affiliated with this group. The first, that outside marketing help costs more than it should. It's best to engage an agency only when you have a specific marketing activity in mind. So sort of further down the decision tree in terms of what people have decided to do, that's when they're going to engage an agency in this group. And then two also that I found interesting that are new, a much greater sense with this group that their organization is not doing a good job with marketing and not prioritizing it. So they have their own challenges that they're struggling with. But the core of this group, in terms of how they view agencies and the kind of relationships they want, stays true to what we saw 5 years ago.
So one of the things we know about this group is they are the ones who are most likely to have multiple agency relationships. So they truly have earned the moniker playing the field. They are much more transactional with their agencies. And we are not going to be seen as really thought leaders in terms of ideation. What they do is they look inside their own organization and say, you know what, we're not so good at this and it's not a priority. I need to make it a priority because it's my job on the line. So I need to go out and find some expertise. So it's not that they don't value us, but they really value us more on the execution side than anything else.
Mm-hmm. And then the third group we saw 5 years ago, single and satisfied. And these folks remain as they did 5 years ago, basically saying, we're doing a good job with marketing. We're keeping our finger on the pulse of what's happening in terms of marketing tactics and strategy and various approaches. We know what's going on and we have a good idea of what we need. What's missing this year is there was an attitude associated with this group in 2014 that agencies are a good source of ideas that we can execute on our own, and that is gone this year in terms of affiliation with this group. So I think they are even more sort of confident that they know what they need to be doing and are doing a pretty good job, which is not to say they don't use agencies. They absolutely do.
But they basically place an order. And so again, you can sort of see the stradation between the three groups where Looking for Love, they want to hear what you think. You're going to influence their business strategy, down all the way to these folks who are, this group is also the group that is most likely to hire very defined specialists around not only verticals, but around deliverables. So they're the ones who are going to go hunting. We need an SEO expert agency. Let's go find that. We need an Amazon agency. Let's go find that. And then we are going to prescribe what we want them to do and then pay them to do it. So you can sort of see the range between these three groups of folks and how they view their interactions with agencies.
Yeah. So the second thing that was eye-opening for me in this study when I was going through the results, the first was same segments, really fundamentally as we saw 5 years ago. The second was this. Back in 2014, we only had clients that were $1 million or less. And our breakdown is pretty similar to what it was then. Looking for Love has grown a lot among clients of this size of budget. But the real surprise is when we look at the clients over $1 million, which we didn't have back then, and look at the predominance of playing the field. 54% of the clients that have a budget over $1 million a year are playing the field, which is a huge number.
So again, this is where I said the Looking for Love are the folks we all want, but they come with their own challenges. And the very first challenge that we're identifying for you is if you want that kind of a collaborative relationship. And again, these are generalizations. We're not saying that every client over $1 million, none of them are looking for love, because you can see 15% are. But the lion's share of the Looking for Love folks have under $1 million in marketing spend. So one of the compromises we have to make when we want to have that kind of a relationship is that they're going to have smaller budgets. For some of you that have defined that you want to go after a niche and that you work better with smaller clients where you can have more of an intimate relationship, that the good news is there's a lot of them out there. And as long as you're okay with $1 million or less of budget, which for many AMI agencies is still a very healthy budget, you're in good shape. If you want to go after the $5, $10, $15, $20 million budgets, the odds are you are going to be working with somebody who has a little more disdain about their agency relationship because they're in that playing the field crew.
Yeah, and probably some more pricing pressure given the playing the field's perspective that outside marketing costs more than it should.
Right. So you're constantly going to have to be justifying your spend.
Right. And we saw this pattern in all of the countries that we surveyed, even more dramatically than we saw in the US. I mean, the playing the field is the largest segment by a significant margin across all of these geographies that we looked at.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about differences by budget. One of the things we saw overall, and we've seen this in other studies that we've done, Drew, is that respondents under 40 are far more likely than older respondents to be managing these big budgets. 73% of the folks who have a budget of $10 to $20 million are under 40.
Yeah, this is a horrifying statistic. I think for many folks who are on the north side of 40. And what this really means for all of us is that the people who are controlling these big budgets are getting younger and younger. And so, when I talk to you guys, a lot of times you're talking about how your clients in some cases are getting younger, have less experience, less sophistication. And this data point just proves that your experience is becoming more commonplace for agencies, across the land. So it is what it is, but understand again, if you're going after bigger budgets, odds are you're going to be working with somebody younger. And depending on your age, might be like your kid's age. And so, that's a delicate dance to not treat them like a kid.
Yeah, and it's really dramatic when you look at these budgets under 250,000, the percentage of those folks who are over 60 managing those budgets, 70% of the folks over 60 are managing these smaller budgets. So depending on who you're working with, you might see something really different in terms of who's calling the shots on that budget. The other thing we saw is that respondents with bigger budgets overall have more agencies, probably not terribly surprising.
Yeah, you know what? I also think that I think a couple of things. Number one, that 60 plus crowd, you got to figure a lot of that are, especially with the smaller budgets, are business owners probably, and they may be in some sort of transition mode, but the original owner or the elder owner is still in place. And this statistic about working with more than one agency, this is not new news. Every year we have done research. So now for 5-6 years, we have seen that most of the respondents have more than one relationship. And it's very rare that they are going to only have one agency of record, and everything is going to funnel through that agency. So while I know for every agency, or for most agencies anyway, that is the coveted position, I think we have to sort of recognize that may be a horse we have to give up on.
Yeah. And, for those of you working with the folks that have smaller budgets, here's the $250,000, 72% of them have only one agency. So again, this alignment we see with that sort of looking for love type of relationship with these smaller organizations, smaller budgets, definitely is holding true. Interesting, and maybe something people might not expect, is that bigger budgets are actually more likely to be outsourcing a greater percentage of their marketing. So they're doing a lot more, but they're outsourcing a lot more of it than the little guys are.
Yeah, this was, I think, surprising with the assumption that larger budgets would mean larger in-house teams, which would mean less outsourcing. But actually the opposite is true, which again is good news because bigger budgets, even if they're splitting that $10 million amongst 3 or 4 agencies, any one of those pieces of business is still a good chunk.
For sure. Again, we see a difference with the smaller guys on this in terms of how much they're outsourcing. They're trying to do a lot more themselves, I think is basically what's happening in those smaller budgets. And all of the segments are outsourcing content marketing at substantial levels to agencies. which is kind of interesting too. So if you're doing content for folks, then you are likely going to be doing that regardless of which type of client that you have.
This is an area where many agencies are struggling to figure out how to do content profitably and well. And what this data tells me is that's a nut we have to figure out how to crack, because the demand is there. And it's not just our research. Content Marketing Institute and Marketing Profs just came out with new research too, and it's the same thing, that clients are outsourcing this probably because it is difficult. But we've got to figure out how to do this profitably, because the demand is not going to go away.
Yeah. And when we ask clients why they're outsourcing content marketing, I found the results really interesting, because a lot of these folks say it's an expertise that they are hiring. It's not just that they don't have time to do it themselves, or, don't have the capability to do it. So we see here 34%. We have specific expertise in content marketing. It's so important that we want the agency's expertise to do it right. So a lot of these folks, it is a specific thing that they are outsourcing for the agency's expertise, not just as sort of overflow, sort of low-level work. You wanted to talk a little bit about working with out-of-market agencies in this study, Drew.
Yeah, so that the stuff we've shown you so far is sort of let's look at 2014 and let's look again at 2019 and see how things have changed. And we just have walked you through some of that. But there were a couple things that we wanted to talk to the respondents about that we have not talked to them about before. So one of the things I was curious about was how do clients feel about agency proximity? For many of you, you worry about that a lot, about does it matter if you're local? Do you have to discount your prices if you're not local? And I keep sort of beating if you're a specialist, they'll fly over a bunch of generalists to get to you drum. So anyway, we just wanted to find out how they felt about out-of-market agencies, why they would use one, why they wouldn't, what their concerns were, and all that sort of thing. So that's what this next segment is about.
So this was another eye-opener for me, Drew, is the percentage of clients who say they are working with agencies more than 200 miles away. It's more prevalent in the larger budgets, but there's a lot of folks out there. Over half of the respondents in our study say they're working with agencies out of market.
Yeah, this was one of the more surprising data points for me on this research too, was that it validated my guess, and it really was a guess, that proximity was not as important to clients, especially as you get into larger budgets. I think it's more important, and you can see this on the chart. The smaller the budget, the more the needier they are, probably the less sophisticated they are in theory, and the more face time they would want with an agency. Whereas when you get into the bigger budgets, they're used to working with vendors and partners from all over the land. And so for them, it was no big deal. But even I was surprised by the dominance of this, that it was over 50%.
Yeah, it was pretty interesting. And when you look at it by segment, so all of the segments are doing it. Playing the field are doing it most, 61% of that group, compared to 39% of the looking for love, or 47% of the single and satisfied. So they're the lion's share in terms of working with out-of-market agencies, but everybody's got it going to some extent.
Well, and even the looking for love is 40%. That's still
40%, yeah.
A big chunk, yeah.
That's a big chunk. And where are they located? Well, a lot of them are in state. 58% said that the agencies that they're working with out of market are still within their state. And on the looking for love, to your point earlier about sort of wanting FaceTime and stuff like that, the looking for love who are working with an out of market agency tend to have them a little closer in than some of our other folks, playing the field in a different part of the country, even in a different country.
Yeah.
And why they're using out of marketing agencies? Wow, this was interesting. Expertise really took the top ranks for what people said was the rationale for working with an out-of-market agency for their organization. So expertise in a particular geography. So that's like we're Texas experts, or, we're Maine experts, or we're Europe experts. Expertise in an industry or an audience. These were two separate pieces that I've combined here to show you, that really is about sort of who we're trying to talk to. Expertise in a language, 32%, and in a type of marketing, 18%. And when you compare these to what we saw on affordability, that they're working with an out-of-market agency because it's cheaper than an agency nearby, that was only 16% of the respondents in our survey said that. And they could choose as many of these as they wanted to. So that was really striking to me, that cost wasn't up higher at the top of the list, and all of these expertise elements did better than that.
Yeah, so the data here supports the mantra I've been sort of preaching to you guys for the last few years, which is specialize, 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 niche, niche, niche. The geography was interesting. It is very much about either we're the expert. So if you sell in this local or regional market, we understand this audience better than anyone else. Or if you want to break into, say, the Pacific Northwest, we're the ones that can introduce you to this unique culture, et cetera, et cetera. So that's what that one is about. So
Yep.
Again, I think this just proves that it's tough to be a generalist these days.
Yeah, for sure. And we see this interest in expertise across all of the segments. So our looking for love folks are a little less interested in some expertise about a geography they're looking to penetrate someplace else. But in terms of industry verticals, consumer demographics, geography we currently market, whatever, a lot of consistency between the segments. So there are some concerns with working with out-of-market agencies, and we asked the folks who are working with them what kinds of concerns have come to mind during that decision process. And almost half of them said that in-person meetings are really important and may happen less frequently. And then 37%, it may be more difficult to communicate effectively. So there are some folks too that just would love to support local if they could. But a lot of the concerns are about communication or sort of attention that they might get if they're not close by.
Which you would expect. But the point is, these are the people who are working with out-of-market agencies. So while they have these concerns, the concerns do not outweigh, in their mind, the benefit of working with that subject matter expert, in whichever expertise
Absolutely.
they may be.
Yep, it's strong enough to get them over that hump for sure. And we can see that a lot of these concerns are more likely to be held by playing the field respondents than any of our others. So they're not only more likely to be working with out-of-market agencies, but they do have greater concerns with regard to communication and attention on their account than some of the other folks do. You also want to look at what clients want from their agency's owners, Drew.
Yeah, as you guys know, this is a topic of particular interest to me because I know for many of you, you struggle with, a 60-hour work week trying to do both your job as an agency owner, and that many of you play a day-to-day role inside the agency as well. And so we thought we would try and get it right from the horse's mouth in terms of what do they expect in terms of the agency owner's involvement, how much, where, why. And so we asked a bunch of questions around that topic.
Yeah. So we started with, when have you seen the agency owners in your experience, right? When have they been present? And what we saw a lot of people selecting are sort of what you would expect during strategic meetings between us, internal discussions about our account, and then in the onboarding and in the pitch. That's pretty common. When you look at it by budget, we're sort of all over the place, but one thing I want you to know is that these under 250,000 budget folks are more likely to say that the owner was there during the pitch than anybody else, and less likely on a lot of these other things like strategic meetings. So, they are seeing the owner in the pitch, but after that, not as likely. Then we asked them when they think the owner should be present. And we saw consistency in terms of the strategic meetings or whatever, and particularly for the looking for love folks who we know tend to be a little bit smaller overall, initial onboarding and the pitch are popular, some creative meetings, etc. But there was a lot of alignment between when people are seeing owners and when they think they should be seeing owners. One thing that was interesting is we asked folks by budget when they would expect to see an agency owner. And the folks who have the smaller budgets are more likely to say they expect to see the owner during the pitch and onboarding, and less likely to say they expect to see the owner after that. So it seems to me, Drew, like sort of they have managed their expectations knowing that their budget is smaller, that they're not really expecting to see the owner that much after sort of the initial go.
Yeah, I think they know they're a smaller account for most agencies, and I just think they sort of know how they fit in the pond, if you will.
For sure. A lot of folks, though, do say that their owners should be more involved. 51% of the playing the field, they have the largest percentage of all the groups, but sizable portions of all of the segments say owners should be more involved. And again, those with lower budgets, lower expectations that'll be the case, but especially in the bigger budgets, we've got half of our clients saying they think their owners should be more involved in their account.
And this also gets to the idea that you should have multiple relationships with multiple people inside the organization, and you should have a C-suite to C-suite, and you should have sort of day-to-day hands-on connected to day-to-day hands-on. And we have certainly had agencies where their account relationship has been compromised because at the higher level they didn't really have relationships of depth. And so when things got rocky with the account, with the day-to-day person, there was no one else inside the organization, and certainly no one above that day-to-day contact person, to advocate for the agency inside the client. So they're not only saying that they want more. I'm reminding you that is a worthwhile effort on the client's part, or on the agency's part, for you as agency owners and leaders to forge relationships beyond the day-to-day contact person inside that client.
Yeah, and I think it really counters the sense on for example, the playing for the field, and these folks who have playing the field who have bigger budgets, that it's really sort of a low-level transactional activity with them, because they're the ones most wanting the owner engagement. So even though lots of agencies, lots of work going out, lots of do this for me kind of stuff, clearly that owner relationship is important for these folks with the bigger budgets.
And as you'll see in the next couple of slides, they have some very specific ideas of what that presence should look like.
Right. We did ask folks when they have spoken to agency owners, and it's largely when there have been problems. Questions or concerns about strategic direction of our marketing efforts, concerns about the activity related to my account, concerns about billing. So a lot of the contact they're having now with owners isn't really happy contact necessarily.
Yeah, it feels more like it's problem solving and mitigating risk, which is not obviously the basis of the relationship you want to be having with your clients. Right. Is that they think of you as you're who they talk to when there's something broken or wrong. Right.
A lot of these folks are very open to a friendly relationship with an agency owner. So high percentages here saying probably or definitely. If they're in a leadership role, they're saying, yeah, I would like that kind of relationship outside of sort of daily work requirements with agency owners. And you can see all segments, right, represented up here.
And this is, you guys have all heard me talk about sort of having those client love meetings where it's not in a conference room. It's you grabbing breakfast, coffee, a drink, lunch, golf, theater, whatever it may be. But you are spending time with them, creating a relationship and having the kinds of conversations that you are uniquely qualified to have with a business owner or sort of C-suite level person. And what they're saying is they're open to that. Remember, in many cases, these guys have no other resource to talk about their business in a confidential way. They certainly are not going to confide their worries or fears or ambitions inside the organization, because odds are it's political and kind of a quagmire of mess. So they're looking for a confidant, and you absolutely can serve that role if you carve out the time and you invest in the time to create a relationship that has enough trust and faith built into it that they feel safe talking to you.
For sure. And they believe it benefits the quality of the work that they and the agency will do together. Overwhelmingly say that a relationship like this makes the work better that gets done between the two organizations. So that's just another value. In addition to the confidant, they believe it's going to make the work better. So that's a great rationale for pursuing it. And for those agencies who may not have a relationship at that leadership level with their client's organization, the folks who are in a non-leadership role, who are decision makers with regard to marketing activity in the study, overwhelmingly said that they would be willing to facilitate that kind of a connection with the agency owner and their organization's leadership.
Yeah, so a lot of you talk about not wanting to do an end run around your main client contact to create relationship or spend time with someone at a higher level. And what this data shows is that they actually would encourage it. I'm not saying you would do it behind their back, but I don't think you have to have the worry around it that many of you do. I think they sort of expect you to want to do that. And especially if you can be their cheerleader and talk about what a great job they're doing and how great it is to work with them and all of that, it's to their benefit as well. So don't let the fear of this or the assumption of this get in the way of you actually forging those upper level relationships.
Yeah, especially if they know that it's not just going to be about complaints about what's going on, that it's something positive. So yeah, that's good. And what do people say they would be willing to do with agency owners in this kind of context? 55% said having a quarterly meeting is great. 48% grabbing a meal or a drink together a few times a year. Looking for love in particular are in these two spots, right? We do have playing the field more willing than others to say, we'll go to a game or we'll go play golf or, go to a club or something like that. Okay, so for AMI agencies only, we did open-ended questions as we have done in the past, Drew, with clients asking open-ended what agencies should start doing and what they should stop doing. What is the one thing? And then we tabulated that data. So in this study, what we saw really was that a lot of the comments about what agencies should start doing are with regard to engagement, sort of how you conduct your business with them, communications, follow-up, being responsive, and then getting the work just done well, like do a good job with the work, customer service, and listening. So when we look at looking for love respondents, for example, they're saying, cheaper packages for smaller businesses. You can understand why they'd be interested in something like that. Listening to my ideas. Listening is a big thread that runs through a lot of the comments that we got. Do a needs assessment before jumping in with recommendations or asking more questions during the pitch. Focusing on target audiences, again, really researching my business before you meet with me. And of course, for this group, develop a relationship with me. More one-on-one time with actual face-to-face meetings for strategy and planning. This is another theme that came up a lot. Get straight to the point and keep things simple. A lot of the comments that we got were people talking about the use of jargon and complexity that they find frustrating. So simplicity is one of the things that a lot of the clients in this study are asking for. And then for this group in particular, knowing how they feel about a relationship with an agency and their expectation that it will last a long time, it's a real partnership, provide solid client references up front that can be contacted prior to setting up a pitch meeting.
Yeah, so I think one of the dangers with this group is because they are smaller budgets, oftentimes you may be relegating them to a younger AE who maybe has more of an order taker mentality. And you can see when you look at this list, they need guidance. They need someone to help them make good decisions, and they want to do that by creating a relationship and having you ask great questions. So be thoughtful about how you pair up. You're looking for love clients and your AEs, especially if you or somebody at a senior level is not going to be super hands-on.
Yeah, trust is so important for this group just because they don't plan to discard you next year or the year after. For playing the field, what agencies should start doing? Discounts for using you more often. They are sending out a lot of work and they want some recognition of that in the price. Caring about my company as if it was your own. Here we go again. Listen to us about what we need. Start putting yourselves in the minds of our target customers. Stop overselling. Keep things simple and know our business before contacting us. So some commonalities with this group and the other.
And again, these guys are certainly going to be more cut to the chase relationship type folks. So they are, and remember, they're the ones who are less likely to need or to believe they need ideation. So I don't believe they actually don't need it. I think you're just going to have to earn the right to offer it. So I think by proving yourself to be an advocate for their business, as they say, caring about their business, and maybe that shows up in ways of knowing their business, baking in discounts if you need to, whatever it does you need to do to demonstrate that you're committed to their success before you start offering strategic advice, because for them, that's going to be a position that is earned over time.
And on the single and satisfied front, bill me for things I actually need. Give us more of a say. Again, this is the group that says, we know what we're doing. We have a handle on things and we're doing pretty well. Adopt AI. So some more of the things, one of the things we saw with this group is that they will outsource things that are just more complex than they can handle or they're just unfamiliar with. So I think it's interesting that AI popped up in this group. Be more involved in your clients' communities, which I thought was interesting. There was a comment about agencies basically feeling like they're the more important one in the relationship. You need us and we need you. It should always be a balanced relationship. I love this. Start giving more opinions. We often hear what one person has to say and don't hear about other options. Provide ROI on your work and become friends with your clients.
So, I think this is about, this is the group that is probably looking for a different level of sophistication in some cases, because they are outsourcing you for a very specific deliverable set. So the fact that you can do it more effectively and efficiently, hence the AI stuff, but oftentimes this is going to be where you're going to have one strong lead AE, or maybe it's an owner or a director of account service. And what they're saying is, if you're going to have more people in the room, we actually want more of a council of advisors rather than just one point of contact. So you may want to think about this may be a group where you bring in other department heads and subject matter experts. And I know some of you are really great at doing that, and others really rely super heavily on just the account service team to drive all of that. And so you might want to add more voices to the choir with this group.
Okay, what should agencies stop doing? Well, not surprising. A lot of these comments came in about how we engage with our clients, particularly when it comes to pitching and being pushy. The word pushy shows up a lot in these comments. And this group of comments exceeds even those on compensation, right? Like making it cheaper. 13% of our respondents said there's nothing their agencies need to stop doing. But when we look at looking for love, this probably won't surprise you. Charging too much for services we can do in-house, being impatient when we try to give an idea of what we're looking for. I want my opinion respected and not looked down on. So I think these comments are really about, even though I have a small budget, listen to me. I am part of this relationship and I may have some good ideas. I love this. Stop insulating your top management from clients. Get them out of their bubbles. to see our needs firsthand. Trying too hard to accomplish a task you're not trained in. Too often, our agency gives in to the ideas of people on our team who are not experts. So that's about basically taking a stand with regard to the expertise we've hired you for and emailing us a load of PR puffery. Again,
Did they put that in more colorful language?
Yeah,
Yeah.
PR
Yeah.
puffery.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. But you know, I think the pushy thing has come up in several years worth of research now. So
Yeah.
clearly that is something that we don't think we're coming across as pushy, but obviously we are, because it is a recurring theme in several years of the research, is that they feel like, in essence, we are constantly trying to shove our hand in their pocket. And they resent it, and it makes them frustrated and angry. And I think in the end of the day, it's one of the reasons why they have multiple agencies, is so they can play us against each other.
Yep. Playing the field, overcharging us and putting our work off to the side. Having a lower level person initially contact us that is unable to answer questions and unfamiliar with our type of business. Lumping us in with similar companies in our sector. Trying to appear clever with psychobabble. Setting unclear expectations, getting paid without demonstrating results. And this one I thought was interesting, given what's going on with these groups and multiple agencies, trying to badmouth other agencies.
Yeah. So remember, this is the group that has the largest budget, always is working with, not always, but most of the time is working with multiple agencies. But this was also the group that had the budgets being controlled by younger professionals. So you can sort of hear some of their maybe discomfort at being one of the younger people in the room in some of this. They're sort of, it's almost an arrogance with a bit of insecurity underneath it. These were also the ones, this was also the group, remember, that what scored high on the yes, take me out for drinks and dinner. In other words, wine and dine me a little bit. So you can sort of see the psychology behind some of this, and begin to understand this audience a little better.
And then finally, single and satisfied, what agencies should stop doing. Less nickel and diming. Acting as if you already have all of the answers and not asking for my input. Assuming what my company needs. Pitching business we don't need. Talking jargon, flowery nonsense, which is a fake expertise indicator. Hiring people who don't want to be there and promising more than you can deliver. So again, pushy, pitching, you know, and just talking in ways that make you look like you're trying to sound smarter than you are.
But you know, I look at this list too and say, okay, I should act as if I have all the answers, but then I shouldn't assume what your company needs. So we're also getting some mixed messages here. So even if you can sort of type your clients or prospects into some of these categories, you still have to sort of do your due diligence to sort of figure out how that human being wants you to engage with them, and not necessarily assume that they're gonna align with exactly what the research aligns, because all of them are going to have nuances, and you can see that in this stop doing list.
Yeah, and we've seen in earlier studies where this younger crop of folks managing big budgets are often more likely to say, look, I know what I'm doing, even though my organization doesn't.
Right. I'm surrounded by morons, but I've got it covered. Right.
Exactly. That's right. So that's it this year, Drew. Fascinating study, I thought, and really interesting to see some consistency. We'll have to look again in another 5 years and see where we are.
Yeah. Okay, guys, questions for us. You've been very quiet. I think you're probably already like having your agency Thanksgiving dinner, but maybe you've already had pie and you're napping. Any questions for us on any of this? I know this was a ton of data. One of the things we didn't mention, but I want to make sure you know, is that we will be sending out a document that is interactive. So you'll be able to say, you'll get all of this data by question, and you'll be able to say, how did women answer this question? Or how did people with budgets under 5 million answer this question? Or whatever it is. So you'll be able to really slice and dice and dig into this data to get very specific to kind of match the kind of clients that you guys are dealing with. So we'll be getting you access to that shortly. So hang on, we have a question. In the pitching phase, before we know budgets, any smart questions we can ask to determine which of the profiles they most likely fit? Yeah, I think that's always one of the questions that we think about, Jay. And I think there are a couple things. Number one, remember that it's not always about budget. So be careful that you don't assume a segment just on budget. But I think asking about their previous agency relationships, how many other agencies they're working with, are they asking you to do everything from soup to nuts, or are they asking you to do something specific? So if they've worked with their last agency for 10 years, odds are they're a looking for love agency. If you're going to be one of 5 and they want you to do their email marketing and nothing else, then probably they're not a looking for love. They are either a playing the field or a single and satisfied. So I think you can begin to drill down based on the kind of relationship they want to have. And then I think it's asking questions around, help me understand how we can be of most value to you. Do you want us to bring you new ideas? Do you want us to talk to you about strategy? Are you really hiring us just to be an extra set of hands and execute? And pretty soon, I think you'll get to a pretty good insight of who they
Yep.
are.
And I think a key clue for differentiating between a playing the field and a single and satisfied organization is going to be to find out how well they think they're doing with their marketing. How capable are they? Because the single and satisfied folks are always going to say, we're doing great. We know what we need. We have a finger on the pulse. We're very up to date. And the playing the field folks are more likely to say that their organization is not doing a really great job on their own. Even though the person you may be talking to feels that they're an expert, we see a lot of these folks in playing the field really saying, yeah, it's just not as big a priority here as it should be. And they don't really know what they're doing.
Yeah.
Even if I.
Yeah. Yes, you are going to get a recording. So we'll send that out probably by the end of the week. Did you see any patterns for who fits into each segments by variables other than marketing budget? Yep. So not by revenue or industry. So we did not see that. We saw it more in the things that we just outlined. So that's the problem. They all look like, if you're in a room with a bunch of them, they all look the same. And it matters that you drill down a little bit and ask about the kinds of things that we just sort of listed off.
Yeah, it's really more about what's between their ears than it is about anything that you're going to be able to spot.
Yeah. Next question. Some clients think agencies are too pushy. Does outreach, promotional, direct mail pieces, emails, etc. qualify as being too pushy? Well, I think the things like, if it's just, as they called it, PR puffery, then yeah, it probably does. So I think it's about making sure that what you send out is actually practical and usable by the audience. So I think if you're helping them get smarter at doing their job, then I don't think it's pushy. Then I think it's being useful. But if it's all about you, and you know that I mentioned this on occasion, that I get a lot of agency newsletters, and a lot of them are mostly about yourselves. And so, yes, then I think they would think maybe it's not even pushy, but it would be PR puffery for sure.
Yeah. I mean, the categories of pushy that I saw in the open-ended statements were, pitching, right? So things like cold calling without really knowing who the heck we are, calling and continuing to call after we've asked you to stop, those kinds of sort of that category. And then the other category was really like not listening to me and sort of steamrolling over me with your ideas and not listening to our ideas or questions or, whatever. So I think you're right in terms of a lot, people weren't complaining about direct mail and stuff like that. They were complaining more about sort of calling and pestering and not listening.
And I think a lot of that was we're already your client and we think you're pushy, not so much the prospecting side.
Right.
Yeah.
That's right.
So next question says, looks like the age demographic decision maker / budget holder is correlated with the comfort or willingness or the current status of working with companies that are further away. Is that true? So I think what
Say
she's
that
saying
again.
is the younger they are, the more likely they are to work with an agency out of market.
Let's see. Well, let's see. This is where they're located. If we look at it by respondent age, I mean, I don't know. These are the folks, I mean, even under 30 that are in a different state, et cetera, compared to in-state and being closer.
I think she was suggesting the younger they are, the more comfortable they are.
We can look.
Okay.
Do you want me to take a look now?
Yeah, and I'll answer the next couple questions.
Okay.
So, Kirsten, you said, did you ask them about tenure? Did you mean how long they had been in the job? Is that what you're asking?
I don't know that we did.
Nope.
I don't know that we did ask about that. We haven't.
Or are you talking about tenure of their agency relationship? So let's see what you look up is younger or more likely to work out of market.
Yeah.
And then I'll wait for, yeah. Okay. She's saying tenure of agency relationship, but I'm not, I know it's hard to chew gum and walk at the same time. So you stay focused on this and then we'll answer the question.
It can be a little bit hard to walk and chew at the same time. Okay. So let's see. Let's take a look at this we want to look at this by age. Is that right? Instead of budget?
Yeah.
Let's see. All right. Here's our under 40, 65% working with out of market. And here's everybody else.
So yeah, to a certain extent, but
almost twice as much, really.
A full third are still willing to work with somebody out of market if they're over 40. But yes, I think the answer to your question is, yeah, if they're a little younger, then they are more likely to be comfortable with that. And that makes sense. They're more comfortable with long distance relationships and, they sit on a couch and text each other. So why wouldn't they be comfortable with that with their agency too? So, and then Kirsten's question was, what tenure of the agency relationship?
Yeah, we don't have that. We do have how long they've worked with agencies overall.
But not how long they've worked with their specific.
But not how long, right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I suppose that would be challenging because if they're working with 5 agencies, they would have 5 different answers.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. What other questions do you have for us, guys? So while I'm waiting to see if you have more questions, we will send out the video. We'll send out this deck. And I will also include, again, I did email all of you, but I will email it again, or I'll include again as a download on this landing page, the executive summary with all of the verbatims in it, and the other things that we held back just for you. So I'll get that out to you probably by the end of the weekend.
Yeah, and one of the things that'll be in this workbook you're going to get is you can look at the detailed open-ended responses by segment, by the category of the response, et cetera. So you can see exactly what all of the open-ended responses are for both starting and stopping activities for agencies by group. So that'll be part of this interactive visualization that you'll get.
I don't know that we know the answer to this question, but do clients consider holding them accountable for things they owe the agency as being pushy or being responsible and proactive? I'm not sure we have.
I didn't see any specific comments on that. About sort of responding to the agency pestering me for the stuff they need from me. I didn't see anything like that in the open-ended questions, in the open-ended responses.
I do think there are ways to nag them in a more client-friendly way, so it doesn't feel like you're, being their mom or dad. But I think they also hold us accountable for that. In fact, in some of the data that we have that we teach in like the AE boot camps, one of the things clients want from us is they want us to be super organized and hold them accountable because they can't, get their own act together.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Any other last questions? Yes. Happy Thanksgiving back to all of you. Our pleasure to do this. Thanks for making time. I know it's a tough day to gather for something like this, so I appreciate your attendance. Anything else for the good of the cause?
Appreciate everybody being here and hope you all have a good holiday.
All right. Watch for an email from me with the link to the landing page with all this data. If you think of questions after we disconnect, feel free to email Susan and or I together or independently, and we are happy to answer it. If it's data specific, like that Susan has to click around inside the data, then obviously she's going to be a better resource for that than I am. But feel free to copy
I'd like
me.
to see you do that.
Yeah, feel free to copy me on that because I'm happy to weigh in on the implication side of it, even if I have no idea how to actually access the data in the Tableau thing. So, all right, guys, thanks very much.
Thanks, everybody.
Happy Thanksgiving.